Good morning, friends. Today we'll cover chapter 8 of our tutorial series on Spark RDD for Java developers. So this chapter 8 is on printing the elements of Spark RDD. Because printing is a very important concept that we have to if you want to investigate what is there in the RDD, the most common approach is that we will print it to see that what's there inside or print it in the logs. So we can print out the elements of an RDD using this code snippet that we can use rdd.foreach, and then we can pass this println as a lambda, as a consumer. Or we can also use rdd.map, and then again we can pass the lambda here. So on a single machine, this will generate the expected output and print all the RDD's element. We're talking only about a single machine. But guys, we already know that Spark is only used in the big data context. When there's a huge amount of data, we need processing on that big data. In that case, we always have the cluster mode, where we have got one driver node, and which has got several worker node or executor nodes. So this is the general design of a Spark RDD and the use case. It's always used in the big data context. So in cluster mode, the output to stdout being called by the executors is not now writing to the executors stdout instead, not the one on the driver. So stdout on the driver won't show these. So what we mean is that once we create an RDD, right? So we have got a driver node, and driver node is splitting that RDD and giving it to the worker nodes or the executor nodes. And the RDD, if the RDD is very huge, normally it's always very huge. That's why we are using Spark. So RDD would be spanning across worker nodes, several worker nodes that we have, like this structure. And once we call this println or something, so this println is, if we are calling it a driver node, of course, RDD is not on the driver node, but it's at worker node. So we don't have this RDD at driver node. So println will give exception that time. So one way is that because we don't have the RDD here in driver node and we are calling println here, it will fail. It will give an exception. So how to overcome this? So if you want to print all the elements on the driver, now one can use the collect method to first bring the RDD to the driver node. For example, we can call this rdd.collect method, and then we can call for each to println. So collect method. So the collect method, it will just bring this RDD back to the driver, and then we can call the println method, for each println method, to print the elements of the RDD. But just think about it, right? Suppose if the RDD is very, very huge and the driver node is always a single master node, and if there's not enough memory there in the driver node, then this will also fail. So this can cause the driver to run out of memory, though because collect fetches the entire RDD to a single machine, which is our master node. If we only need to print a few elements of the RDD, a safer approach is to use the take method. So you just save the first 100 elements of the RDD and then call for each println. So these are the various techniques that how to print an element use the driver node. Now, enough of the theory now. Let's dive into the code and see all of this in action. So I've already created a unit test class, RDD printing test, in chapter 8 in our test Java. And it's a very similar concept, similar like coding that initialization that we have done in our previous test cases, that we create a Spark config first, and we set the app name as RDD printing test. This would be visible in the UI if you are opening the UI. And we're setting the master as local star, which means that all the local CPU cores would be used for all the worker nodes that we have. And now we create our data, the data which will be transformed into RDD and stored in these worker nodes. So we have this before all method, which means that before any other unit test case will run, this is the first thing that would be done. And in this before all, we are populating this data, which is a list of double. So we only keep it small. So what we are doing here is that we are putting the data size from up to so there are 20 elements and double elements in this data. And we are putting the values like this, that we are calling this thread local random dot current dot next double. So what it will do is that it will this next dot next double, it will give me numbers between 0 to I mean, all in double, like 0.1, 0 to 1, all in the double format. So 1 would be exclusive, 0 would be inclusive, which means only 0 would be there, but exactly 1 will not be there. It should something like 0.99 something. And then we multiply it by 100. So it means that the value would be between 0 to say 99 point something. And then we add plus 47. So whatever the range is there, it should be from 47 to 99.99 plus 47. So it means that 146 something. Okay. Okay, so this is the data that we are just using some random numbers and initializing it. And this is the data that we are going to use. Now for our first unit test case, what we'll do is that we'll test printing Spark RDD elements using for each only. So by using for each only means that we are not actually calling any collect method or take method, which will collect all the elements back to the. So what for each means that it will just call for each in the executor node. If you are running it in the driver node, then it should fail, giving an exception, because this RDD is not currently present in driver node. It's only present in the worker node. If you are just using for each, and we already done in our theory section that we have to collect this data, this RDD, back into driver node. If we are running for each here, so collect will bring this data here, and or we can also use take method as well if we are just taking the few elements of the RDD and printing it here in the driver node. So let's try first with the for each, which will just running it if in the worker node or driver node, it doesn't care, and we expect that this should give an exception.